Hey everyone, welcome back. My name is Eddy Hood, and I wanted to talk about the difference between boring books and books that are challenging to read, because when you're in them, you can have sort of the same emotional response. It can feel hard, challenging. It can feel like work, really. And if it's a boring book, you should probably set that down. But if it's not, if it's just difficult to get through, that might be worth your time to push through. So in today's video, I wanted to give you some tools or some tips to think about this before you make a decision on whether this book is worth your time or not. So I'm going to go through a couple books with you and share with you my experience and help you understand this. I know I'm supposed to like this book. In fact, I'm supposed to love this book because I love classical literature. This is Moby Dick. I didn't like it. This is not a book for me. And I know before you shut off the video, this works for some people and it doesn't for others. It just didn't work for me. But what I found is that 50 pages in, I should have set the book down, but I didn't. And the reason why I didn't set it down is because I thought, well, it's a classic. I'm just going to push through. It's a classic for a reason. And, I should have listened to myself. It was active work to get myself to want to pick up the book and to move through the storyline because I just wasn't vested. It took emotional work, it took mental work, it took physical work. It just wore me out reading the book, and it didn't do it. Now, on the other side of the spectrum, we have this book. This is The Denial of Death, and this book takes a lot of work to get through as well. But it's a different kind of work, and we have to be careful that we don't get misguided by our emotions again. Like I said, fear feels like excitement. Work can create a feeling of anxiety or stress, or I don't know what you feel. But when you sit down to read a book like this, you might feel some of the same feelings of tension when you are in a book that you don't enjoy. The Denial of Death is the kind of book that you have to have your notebook next to you. You have to have a pen and paper. You have to have your note-taking system, really. And you're not going to get through 30 or 50 pages a day. You'll probably get through 5 or 10 because it's rather thick and dense. 50 pages in, I remember thinking to myself, okay, this is really good, but I don't know if I have the mental stamina to keep up with this thing. I made a commitment to stick with it though, and I'm really glad that I did because I learned a lot about myself, I learned about psychology, I learned about my own relationship with my own mortality, which I think is useful. I'm glad I stuck with this book. I'm glad I pushed through because at 50 pages, part of me wanted to stop. I knew this was going to be hard work. So that's the difference, right? You have books that don't speak to you, and that's work that you're not going to enjoy. And you have books that will speak to you, but you're going to have to dig in and pay attention. That's work you will enjoy as long as you sit down and do it. I want to challenge you, 50 pages into any book, to give it a chance. Never make a decision until you've reached page 50. But at that point, if you're feeling like you're not sure whether you should carry on, ask yourself whether it's work because it's not speaking to you and it's boring, in this case Moby Dick for me, or it is working for you but it's actually going to mentally strain you. That's the Denial of Death, and you want to push through that. And if in your heart you know it's going to be mentally challenging, I say push on. It's worth your time and effort. Now, the third book in the thumbnail is this one, Stephen King's Misery. This is actually one of my favorite books of all time. There is no questioning about whether or not you should continue on with it. The book just grabs you and pulls you through. This is a different kind of reading though, isn't it? This is a thriller. It's designed to get you to the last page. These other books are not, but that doesn't mean they're not worth reading. Stephen King's Misery was incredibly fascinating, super fun to read, and I will always remember the characters. The Denial of Death changed me as a human being and helped me understand more about myself. And the last thing I want to say is if you are interested in building a better reading habit, that's something I talk about every week in my newsletter, but I don't call it a newsletter, I call it a focus letter. I feel like if I'm going to send you an email, it should have a very specific job, and that job is to build better reading habits. So go to thereadwellpodcast.com. This is where you can see all of the episodes for the podcast. You can get my weekly essays. But most importantly, if you click on the subscribe button up top here, you can get that focus letter. Just add your email address here, click sign up, and you'll be good to go. Thanks.